Welcome to this part of the meeting. My name is Don Nakayama. This is Bill Richards. Bill is Chair of the Department of Surgery at University of South Alabama. I'm used to be at Carolina working for Dr. Greenberg, but now I'm at University School of Medicine in Columbus. Dr. Greenberg is Chair of the Department of Surgery. She is, as listeners of the previous session yesterday know, she's a leader, world-renowned leader in health services research and a surgical oncologist. She is an expert in care delivery in operating rooms and innovative approaches to collaborative learning and surgical coaching.
Good morning. I'm really happy to be here at this session. My name is Bill Richards. I'm chair at the University of South Alabama. I've been chair for about 13 and a half years. So I've made many mistakes, and I've made the same mistakes more than once. So therefore, I'm qualified to moderate this panel. So I'll introduce Dr. Valentine Fonsam, who is a clinical specialist in colorectal and gastrointestinal surgery, gastrointestinal oncology, and laparoscopic and robotic assisted surgery. His research focuses on colorectal cancer, especially in the young, in addition to disparities in colorectal cancer. He's very accomplished, many awards, many grants, a lot of research papers, but I'm going to take out this one award that he recently won from the University of Arizona College of Medicine Tucson Clinical Excellence Award, which is a recognition by his peers for the clinical care that he gives to his patients. He's currently been, recently been named the chair of the Department of Surgery at LSU School of Medicine. So I think Don and I are going to ask a series of questions and just see the perspectives of these new chairs.
Yeah, this is less of a how-do and more of a leadership seminar, because both Dr. Fonsam and Greenberg have negotiated the transition to being a chair of surgery extremely well. You want to make sure that we all share in their experience and their perspective. So I'll start out. I'll also agree that the importance of establishing a culture that is collegial yet productive. Describe how you went about achieving just that. Caprice.
Sure. So I think culture is the most important thing to think about when you're taking on a new position as a leader. And it's really important to understand the history of the organization that you're joining and the culture that's there, making sure that the values are honored and continued, but then also trying to understand how you can align your own values with the culture that you're trying to promote. I think that this, in my mind, is one of the most important things to be evaluating when you're looking at a position, because you want to make sure that the organization that you're joining really prioritizes the same things that you do in terms of your career. So for me, the reason that I thought the University of North Carolina was a great fit for me was I was very interested in an organization that was mission driven, that was focused on taking care of the entire population of the state, and that had a collaborative environment. And those were the cultures that I saw and that have turned out to be true.
Well, I got to tell you, I've been chair now for 4 months. Culture is very important for sure. And every institution have their own culture. But more importantly, that culture, you have to understand that that culture is formed by a series of events in the past. I think that having been in some institutions where you have a new chair comes in and say, I'm going to change the culture completely. I think that's actually not what a good leader should be about. I think, first of all, you have to understand why the things are the way they are, and then try to make incremental changes. And because if there's a significant amount of resistance, no matter your good intentions, things never pan out. So again, just understanding why things are done the way they are, and then just keep pushing and making changes. And for me, more importantly, articulating the vision.
Great. Let's go on to the next one. So every department has its problems, which search committees are often too eager to point out. How did you go about identifying these problems and prioritize solutions to those problems?
Well, you're absolutely right. Every department has problems, and you're also absolutely right. You normally don't get that during your interview process. You don't get a complete picture. So I think when you get to a new place, you have to try to reach out. And so for me, I personally met with every single faculty and all the stakeholders, and then just trying to identify what they perceive as the problems and all the bottlenecks and why. And you get a lot of conversation about all the things that are wrong. But during that process, you also try to find out some of the things that work. And because that's important, and because I don't think any institution has only things that don't work. So you reach out to different stakeholders and then just try to, and then take that problem and prioritize. And some of them, some of the problems, you know, for me, it's always going to be some of the things that I can change and the things that I cannot change. So for the things that I can change, you spend some time there trying to look for solutions and trying to move that process forward. For the things you can't change, you just try to see if you can use some influence to make that happen.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Val said. I think as a new chair, the most important thing you can do in the first 6 months is just listen, meet with as many people as possible, both within the department and outside of the department. Try to get as many perspectives as you identify problems and expand the perspectives of the people that you're talking to, because those problems have arisen from a history that you weren't there to witness. And so I personally inherited a couple of burning platforms that I needed to make changes pretty immediately after I arrived. And then everything else, I really tried to kind of slow roll for the first 6 months and really make sure that I understood the perspective. And finding those people within the department that you trust, who've been there, who really understand the history, that you can kind of try out your solutions and try to see what are some of the unintended consequences if I go in this direction versus this direction, can also be really important. The other thing that Val said that I think is increasingly important as a chair is helping people understand the problems that we can control within the department and the ones that we can't control. And I think the ones that we can't control are going to take longer to build up the political capital, to build up the influence, to try to figure out how decision-making happens within your organization so that you can figure out where you need to position yourself to be able to influence those problems in the long run. But I think in the short run, as a new chair, you do need to have a couple of quick wins, a couple of problems that everybody identifies as problems that you can really move the needle on.
Great. Here's a different one. Every department has its problem people as well. Which type of people pose the most are the most difficult to manage, and how did you identify them, and how did you manage working with them?
All right. Well, there's
aside from sending them out to Georgia to kind of get out of your department.
So, you know, I think that there are three types of people that can be challenging. So the most obvious one is the people who don't think you were the right one to get the job. And those people can be extremely challenging to manage because they can be undermining what you're trying to do and your initiatives, the things that you think are priorities, the culture that you're trying to build. And I think those people you have to spend the most time with and try to get them to understand your vision, what you're trying to accomplish, and see if you can sort of, for lack of a better way to say it, get them to get on the bus, right? Because you really do want to try to retain as many of your faculty as you can. The second group of people that I think can be challenging are the people whose personal values don't align with the culture that you're trying to create. And those people can be really hard to get on the bus because fundamentally there really just are differences in the things that you think are the most important. And neither are right or wrong. It's just that they might not align with the direction that your organization is going. And then the third group that I have found to be the most challenging are people that that can be myopic, that really are focused only on their own group and not thinking about how they might fit within the larger organization and how the success of the organization is tied to the ability to work across disciplines. And so sometimes if you have a division chief or an individual who can only see how their block time or how their clinic influences their small group and not how that is impacting other people, that can be a particularly challenging person to work with.
So the way I approach this, I think that most people have good intentions. I think that there's rarely a surgeon that gets up in the morning and go to work and say, I'm going to go screw things up. So that's how I look at it. And there are going to be people that very myopic, like Capri said, and only think about what's good for them and never looking at the big picture. Those people with time, you might be able to, convince them or spend some time to articulate what the bigger vision is, and you might have them get into the boss. I think for me, the most challenging people are people who just can't get past negative, who all they think about is all the things that are wrong and never give a solution. And whatever solution you come up with, they'll find ways to poke holes through it. I think those are the most exasperating and difficult people to deal with. But most other people, it might take a whole lot of patience and goodwill and also just take ego out of it. Most people would understand. I think most people are good people, and they just need to be talked to.
One of the most heartbreaking things for a chair is that you have really good people, but then they leave. So oftentimes they're not in the limelight, but they are key to retain. How do you identify those people, and how do you win them over onto your team, keep them from leaving?
Yeah, that's very true. If you go to somewhere new, you want to try as much as possible to identify people. So when I was appointed as chair, I sent an email to all the division chiefs and I said, tell me about your vision. I want you to write your vision for the next 5 years and send it to me. But more importantly, I want you to write a succession plan. And that wasn't signaling to them that they're not going to be division chiefs or stuff. I just wanted to see those people who actually have a plan to develop their younger faculty and stuff like that. And for me, that's really important. So identifying and faculty development, especially creating opportunities for younger faculty, mid-career faculty is very important. And so retention, that plays a significant role in retention and keeping talents within that institution. So creating opportunities for them. And so, but then if somebody's leaving your institution for something better, I'm all for that. I think you should encourage them and support them and help them along the way. But if you can keep that person and bring them into the fold by offering something to them that would actually elevate them or help their career, I think it would be the best thing to do, especially talented people. I think one of the worst things to do is to try to give people positions because they complain a lot. I just think that's just not fair for hardworking people who are doing the right thing all the time. And I've seen that happen where you complain the most, and then you get promoted because they just want to shut you down. And people who are working hard every day and doing the right things don't actually get advanced.
So one of the things that I did, both in Augusta and when I got to North Carolina, was I actually tried to meet with each of the faculty members before I discussed them with their division chiefs. And that was because I wanted to get an unbiased impression and perspective of each individual in terms of what they were trying to accomplish. I think departments go through different phases where they have to prioritize different things. And I think at the University of North Carolina for the last 5 years, there was a major focus on building academics, which was a really necessary part of the development and the progression of the department. But I think that some clinical surgeons who were incredibly valuable felt undervalued when I got to the organization. And so that was a phenotype that I spent a lot of time trying to identify, like, who were those clinical experts that I really wanted to go and meet with and make sure that they understood how valued they were. And that just because there was a focus on building academics doesn't mean that they haven't been valued and that they aren't valued and they won't continue to be valued. I think one of the biggest challenges as a department chair is to try to find ways to have all of the different phenotypes of surgeons, whether it's your educators, your researchers, your administrators, your busy clinicians. How do you find what motivates each of the individuals and then make them feel valued for the contributions that they're making to the department? The other thing that I really tried to do was to understand what individuals' goals were and where they ultimately wanted to get to so that I could start thinking about how people fit together. Because I think that sometimes within surgery, we take a very hierarchical approach to our leadership. And so I'm very interested in trying to expand that to have a more collaborative approach to leadership where there's different components of each of the different aspects of the department that are owned by different people. And so it creates more opportunities for people to feel like they're valued, like they're part of the leadership, like they have a seat at the table if there's more tables that are making decisions.
You're not worried about if you ask someone for a succession plan that they're not feel threatened.
Well, for me, again, that question was just to see if people are thinking about succession. I remember my good friend Lee Newmeyer when she was at chair, she always said this, that being a division chief or being vice chair is not a Supreme Court appointment. And she made that very clear. That's not a Supreme Court appointment. You don't have it for life. And so she always had a succession plan, even for herself as chair, right? If I'm not there, who's going to still run this ship? And I just think that it's a way to see if people are thinking about the next group of leaders.
Going on, all of you have a new agenda. You'd like to have your own program implemented. How do you go about implementing or implanting that and having that thrive in a new environment?
So I think when you take on a new position, it's really important, again, to understand what are the strengths of the organization and where are the areas that there really is opportunity for growth. And I think that involves understanding not only your own department, but the organization as a whole, and the opportunities for collaboration. So I think once you identify your vision, it's really being able to articulate what are the, one or two priorities that you really identify for the department that are going to become the sort of personality or the core of what the department is about, and then having the right venues to make sure that you can get buy-in for that vision. The next thing then is looking at the infrastructure and making sure that the infrastructure aligns with what you're trying to accomplish. And chances are that there are going to be components of the infrastructure that may need to be rebuilt, and that can certainly take time. And then thinking about, again, your leadership structure, your committee structure, and how all of that helps to advance the mission that and the priorities that you've identified.
I mean, I certainly agree with Caprice. I think that before you take a position like this, you clearly have a vision. You want that vision to align with the institution's vision, which will be the dean and which might be the chancellor. And but again, even having all those visions, you have to think about the culture of the place and how you strategize. Like, I think the last, I don't know if it was Dr. Saccharin that mentioned it, it's all about strategy. Success is actually dependent on strategy. And I call it retail leadership, where it's a one-on-one selling your vision, even to the skeptics, and just keep doing it over and over and over and over again. And finally, people will see where you're going. And if you make them understand truly that it's really not about you, it's more about the system, and it's more about that patients, and it's more about the individuals that are in the department, and then you get people along. But for me, one of the first things I knew was a challenge that I had to actually address was put some structure in place and try to spend some time building processes and And like I said, every institution is different. If you go maybe in North Carolina, things are more structured already. You know, there's more, the processes are more clear. But then you go somewhere else where those processes don't exist. Whatever vision or plan you have to go back to starting from there.
Okay, let's go to the operating room. A surgeon's reputation begins and ends with the OR. Tell us how you approach the leadership position in the OR and interacting with other chairs of other surgical specialties. Also, tell me how much you operate. Do you volunteer for night call, weekends, holidays?
Chair.
Well, I think that when I got my position approved by the dean, my negotiation took a little longer, and I insisted that I have to be part of the leadership in the hospital, because I've seen a lot of chairs where you have all these hospital problems and your faculty comes to you and you can't fix it, right? You have to go talk to somebody to try to fix that. And so and it took a little longer because I insisted that I have to be part of the hospital. And that has helped a lot because of all the problems and the challenges in the operating room. I had to redo the block time, which was working on it. I have to fix the whole process. You spend so much time in the hospital. And you know that recognizing that one of the biggest frustrations of the surgeons is the operating room and how it functions and the efficiency and all of that. And so for me, it was important that I was part of that process. In dealing with other chairs and in dealing with other leaders, surgical leaders in other department also plays a significant role in trying to create an environment that is not only conducive for your faculty, but everyone in that hospital. I think every chair needs to be operating. I believe that you lead from the trenches and seeing your faculty face the same challenges that they do, you're in a better position to fix that.
So this is a challenge, I think, as we have increased specialization. So I do breast cancer surgery, and almost all of my cases are done at our ambulatory surgery center. And so it's really hard, just based on my case mix, to be present in the main OR. And so I have to be purposeful about trying to find ways to be present there and to understand the issues. This is where I think some humility as a chair is really helpful, and being able to recognize that, I don't understand some of the issues that our cardiac or our transplant surgeons might be facing, and being willing to really be open to trying to understand their perspective and following their lead when it comes to some of the issues. My chair job in Augusta, I was surgeon in chief, and I'm not surgeon in chief in North Carolina. And I agree with Val. It can be very challenging when you're the chair of the Department of Surgery and not the surgeon in chief. And so you don't have control over that clinical component of what happens. So like you in Augusta, the first thing I did, as much as I hated to do it, was to completely redesign the block time. It was a burning platform and had to be done. And in doing so, it really endeared me to the other surgical chairs and allowed me to build a lot of rapport with them. We had a formal committee of the surgical chairs at Augusta, which I chaired, which again gave some formality to the position. That being said, as the chair of the Department of Surgery, you represent most likely somewhere between 40 and 60% of the operative volume. So you really are the de facto surgeon in chief. And so it takes some time to establish that. But, this morning I was almost late because I was on a call dealing with, block time at one of our hospitals. So even if you're not in an official way, you often are playing that role. And I would say that in addition to the importance of aligning with and meeting regularly with the other surgical chairs so that you're in alignment and able to influence, it's also really important to have a strong relationship with the chair of medicine. Because again, when you think about how you're going to influence, having alignment and having the chair of medicine and the chair of surgery building programs together, I think is an incredibly important thing to do.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in leadership by walking around. The only way you really know what's going on is by walking around and doing rounds, either in the medical school or the hospital. There's another side to being a chair, and that's relationship with the community and the region. how are you going about negotiating that?
So this is a huge priority for me. Since I moved from the Brigham to Wisconsin, I've only wanted to be at state institutions because a part of what I'm really interested in doing is being the leader of sort of a population-based approach to surgical care. So I personally think that as the chair of an academic institution, especially a state institution, it is really your it should be one of your priorities to be a leader in terms of organizing the surgeons throughout the state. Are we stopping here?
Is this
All
a
right, so
pause? Is this a fire
We've
alarm?
been instructed to carry on by our fearless leader, Dr. Stewart. So we will carry
Are
on.
we supposed to evacuate now?
Okay, we'll keep going until we hear otherwise. I'll talk louder. I think that one of the most important things, again, is approaching your relationship with surgeons throughout your region as a partnership and as a collaboration. So coming down from the ivory tower should not be the goal, but rather providing the infrastructure and the opportunities for people to get together and share data and learn from each other, I think is really going to help not only to improve the care at the population level, but also to build those referrals, to build those trusts, to help to build the clinical programs.
I actually do think that community engagement is really important. And so, for example, in New Orleans, where, Louisiana has a significant cancer burden, and engaging a cancer center, and Dr. Stewart and team has been doing an amazing job doing this, engaging the community. And also at trauma, we have a lot of gunshot wounds and gunshot deaths in New Orleans. And so trauma the division has been engaging the community. We have faculty that are involved in re-entry for incarcerated people that are released back into the community, and how we even create some temporary housing and health care for them. So I think engaging in the community is really important, and that actually gives not only the department or the institution a whole lot of credence and support.
I'm having trouble focusing. We'll proceed on. John, keep on going. Okay. The future. We hate to sound trite, but what do you see as the biggest threats to academic surgery and also to the whole field of surgery, academic surgery and to surgery itself in the future?
When you look back and see all the amazing contributions surgeons have made to the field of healthcare, and I'm actually putting a talk together, the changing landscape of surgical education.
Apparently,
Do we have
we're
to
being
evacuate?
told that we have to go.